Humans were only ancient rumors to them, until we changed the war. Forever Commander HFY stood on the bridge of the Caltharian battlecruiser, Void's Edge, watching another star system burn. The crimson glow of the dying world below painted harsh shadows across his scaled face. 23 systems had fallen to the Devourers in the past cycle alone. 23 worlds that would never see their suns rise again. "Commander, incoming transmission from High Command," his communications officer, a young Caltharian named Telmos, announced with barely concealed fear in his voice. HFY's 4 eyes narrowed as the holographic projection of Supreme Admiral Korthvel materialized before him. The Admiral's usually pristine ceremonial armor was scorched and dented, telling its own story of desperate battles. "HFY," the Admiral began without preamble, "I need you to understand the gravity of our situation. The 7th Fleet has been completely destroyed. The Devourers have broken through the Nexus defense line." The words hit HFY like a physical blow. The Nexus line had been considered impregnable for over 3,000 years. It was the last major barrier between the Devourers and the core systems of the Galactic Alliance. "How many ships do we have left?" HFY asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Across all remaining fleets, perhaps 2,000 vessels. The Devourers number in the hundreds of thousands now. They've consumed entire civilizations, absorbed their technology, their biological matter, everything." The Admiral paused, his weathered face showing the strain of countless sleepless cycles. "We estimate we have perhaps 50 rotations before they reach the heart worlds. 50 rotations. Less than 2 standard months." HFY felt the weight of billions of lives pressing down on him. The Alliance had stood for 12 millennia, uniting over 1,000 species in peace and prosperity. Now it was crumbling like sand in a storm. "There has to be something," HFY said. "Some weapon, some strategy we haven't considered." Admiral Korthvel was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried an odd quality, as if he were speaking of something he wasn't entirely sure he believed. "There is one possibility. The Research Division has been investigating ancient archives, legends, anything that might give us an edge. They've found something interesting." The Admiral gestured, and another hologram appeared beside his own. It showed what appeared to be a star chart, but one unlike any HFY had ever seen. The stellar formations were ancient, from a time when the galaxy was younger, more chaotic. "This map is over 50,000 years old. It comes from the archives of the first civilization, the predecessors who vanished before any of our current species achieved spaceflight." HFY studied the map with growing confusion. "I don't understand, Admiral. What does an ancient star chart have to do with fighting the Devourers?" The Research Division has been cross-referencing this with other archaeological finds. They believe it shows the original territories of a species the predecessors called the Warbringers, or sometimes the Unyielding Ones. According to the fragmentary records we've found, this species was unique. The Admiral's expression grew thoughtful, almost reverent. "The legends described them as beings who knew only conflict, who turned warfare into an art form. They supposedly possessed an unbreakable will and a capacity for violence that made even the predecessors fear them." "Legends," HFY repeated flatly. "Admiral, with respect, we need real solutions, not fairy tales." "Perhaps. But consider this. Every major species in the galaxy has similar legends. The Vrex call them Death Dealers. The Centaurians know them as the Persistent Hunters. The Mollusk Collective refers to them as those who fight when hope dies. Every culture, every species has stories of these beings, and they're all remarkably consistent." HFY felt a chill run down his spine. He'd studied xenoarchaeology in his youth, before the military claimed him. He knew how rare it was for legends to be so universal, so consistent across species that had never encountered each other before joining the alliance. "What happened to them?" he asked. "That's the mystery. According to the records, they simply vanished. One cycle they were there, the next they were gone. The predecessors wrote of a great exodus, something about the war-bringers departing for distant stars to find worthy enemies." The connection suddenly hit Zexhai like a fusion blast. "You think they might still be out there?" "The research division has identified several star systems from that ancient map that don't appear on any of our current charts. They're in regions we've never explored, far beyond our current borders, in areas where our long-range sensors show unusual energy signatures." Zexhai looked at the ancient map again, this time with new eyes. If even half the legends were true, if these war-bringers really had been as formidable as the stories suggested. "It's a desperate gamble," Admiral Korthvel continued. "But desperate times call for desperate measures. I'm authorizing a deep reconnaissance mission to these coordinates. If there's even a chance that these beings still exist, and if there's any possibility they could be convinced to help us, we have to try. And if they're hostile, if the legends about their nature are true, they might be as dangerous to us as the Devourers." The Admiral's smile was grim. "At this point, Commander, we're facing extinction anyway. At least this way we die trying." 3 days later, Zexhai found himself aboard the exploration vessel, Far Horizon, the most advanced ship in the Alliance fleet. His crew was small but elite: Telmos, who had volunteered despite his fear; Dr. Yithara, the Alliance's foremost xenobiologist; Navigator Keltas, whose understanding of hyperspace was unmatched; and Chief Engineer Brondar, who could make any machine sing with efficiency. They had traveled for 18 days through hyperspace, following the ancient coordinates to a region of the galaxy that their charts listed as empty void. When they finally dropped back into normal space, what they found defied all expectations. The system was alive with activity. Massive structures orbited a yellow star, structures that appeared to be artificial, but built on a scale that dwarfed anything the Alliance had ever constructed. Ships moved between these constructs, but they were unlike any vessels in the Alliance database. "By the ancient flames," Telmos whispered from his station. "Look at the size of those ships." Zexhai was looking. The smallest vessels visible were easily the size of Alliance battlecruisers, while the largest defied easy measurement. They moved with purpose and precision, following patterns that spoke of a highly organized civilization. "Are we detecting any weapon signatures?" Zexhai asked. Chief Engineer Brondar checked his instruments and shook his head. "Nothing that I can identify as weapons, but their power readings are off the scale. Commander, these ships are putting out more energy than our entire home fleet combined." Dr. Yithara was studying her biological scanners with growing excitement. "Commander, I'm detecting life signs. Billions of them. This isn't just a military outpost, it's a thriving civilization." Navigator Keltas looked up from his console with confusion written across his features. "Commander, according to long-range scans, this system shouldn't exist. The stellar formations don't match any of our models. It's as if space itself has been modified." Before Zexhai could respond, every console on the bridge suddenly came alive with incoming signals. Dozens of different frequencies, all broadcasting simultaneously. Telmos worked frantically to isolate and decode them. "Commander," he said, his voice tight with concentration, "these signals. Some of them are military communications, but others appear to be entertainment broadcasts, commercial advertisements, educational programs. It's like we're intercepting an entire civilization's communication network. Can you understand any of it?" "The translation algorithms are working on it, but it's unlike any language in our databases." "Wait." Telmos paused, listening to his earpiece. "Commander, I think I'm getting partial translations. They're talking about something called the Long War and preparations for the final campaign." Dr. Yithara suddenly straightened at her console. "Commander, I need to show you something." These life signs I'm detecting, the physiological readings are unlike anything we've ever encountered. High bone density, redundant organ systems, enhanced muscular structure. It's as if these beings have evolved specifically for warfare. The implications were staggering. They had found them. After 50,000 years, the legendary Warbringers were still here, still thriving, still preparing for battles that might never come. Zexhai made the decision that would change everything. Telmos, open all communication channels. Broadcast on every frequency we can generate. Commander, Telmos protested. If these really are the beings from the legends, announcing our presence might not be wise. We came here seeking help, Zexhai replied firmly. We can't get that help if we hide in the shadows. Telmos nodded and opened the channels. Zexhai took a deep breath and began to speak. Unknown civilization, this is Commander Zexhai of the Galactic Alliance vessel Far Horizon. We come seeking aid against an enemy that threatens all life in our region of the galaxy. We have traveled here following ancient records that speak of a great warrior people. If you are who we believe you are, we desperately need your help. The response was immediate. Every ship in the system stopped moving. The massive constructs went dark. Even the communication chatter ceased entirely. For 15 minutes, the system was silent. Then a single voice responded, speaking in perfect Alliance standard, with an accent that was somehow both ancient and timeless. Alliance vessel, this is Admiral Sarah Chen of the Terran Defense Force. You have found us at an interesting time. We've been monitoring subspace disturbances from your region for several months. We were just beginning to wonder if we should investigate. The voice paused, and when it continued, there was something in its tone that made Zexhai's scales stand on end. Tell us about this enemy of yours, Commander. Tell us about these devourers and their war against your alliance. And then perhaps we can discuss why humanity might be interested in joining another fight. Zexhai felt the universe shift around him. The legends were real. The Warbringers had never left. They had simply been waiting, growing stronger, preparing for the day when the galaxy would need them again. Admiral Sarah Chen materialized on the bridge of the Far Horizon in a shimmer of blue light that made Zexhai's crew step backward in alarm. The human was smaller than he had expected, perhaps 2 meters tall, with dark hair streaked with silver and eyes that seemed to evaluate everything they looked upon with the precision of a targeting computer. Transporter technology, Dr. Yathara whispered in amazement. The Alliance theorized about it, but we never managed to make it practical. Admiral Chen smiled, and Zexhai noticed that the expression didn't reach her eyes. Those eyes held something he recognized from veteran warriors, the weight of countless battles, countless decisions that had cost lives. Commander Zexhai, she said, extending her hand in what their cultural database indicated was a human greeting gesture. I apologize for the dramatic entrance, but time seems to be a factor. You mentioned devourers. Zexhai carefully grasped the human's hand, noting the calluses that spoke of someone who still trained for physical combat, despite her obvious rank. Admiral, we are facing the greatest threat our civilization has ever encountered. Perhaps you could explain how you learned our language so quickly. We've been monitoring your communications for quite some time, Commander. When you mentioned ancient records and warrior peoples, we realized you might be looking for us. We've had translation protocols for Alliance Standard for about 6 months now. Telmos looked up from his station with surprise. Admiral, our communication networks are encrypted with quantum-level security protocols. Chen's smile became slightly predatory. Yes, they are. Very impressive by most standards. She paused, then added with casual precision, it took our computers almost 3 hours to break them completely. The implications of that statement hung in the air like a weapon waiting to discharge. The Alliance's best minds had worked for centuries to develop those encryption protocols. The idea that they could be cracked so quickly was both terrifying and oddly hopeful. "Perhaps," Zexhai said carefully, "you could tell us what you know about our situation. From your communications and news broadcasts, we've learned that an aggressive species you call devourers has been consuming star systems at an accelerating rate. They appear to be a collective intelligence that absorbs other species' biological and technological distinctiveness. They've destroyed approximately 40% of your Alliance's member worlds and are moving toward your core systems." Dr. Yathara stepped forward. "Admiral, our scientists estimate that the Devourers have grown beyond our ability to stop them. They've reached critical mass. Each world they consume makes them exponentially stronger." Chen nodded thoughtfully. "A cascade failure scenario. We've encountered similar situations before." She turned to Zexhai with a look of professional interest. "Commander, your people have been fighting this war for how long?" 17 years, Admiral. We've lost over 3 trillion lives." Something shifted in Chen's expression, and for a moment, Zexhai saw past the professional mask to something harder, more dangerous. 3 trillion, she repeated quietly. "How many species?" 47 complete extinctions that we know of, Zexhai replied. "The Makers, the singing trees of Velon, the crystal cities of New Harmony, all gone." Chen was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried an edge that made the air in the bridge feel colder. "Commander, I need to show you something. With your permission, I'd like to transport your entire bridge crew to our command vessel." "Is that safe?" Telmos asked nervously. "Safer than staying here," Chen replied. "We've detected 47 Devourer scout ships entering this system. They followed your hyperspace trail." The words hit Zexhai like a fusion blast. "That's impossible. We used randomized jump points, quantum masked our trail." "You did, and very professionally. But the Devourers adapt quickly, and they've been chasing Alliance ships for 17 years. They've learned your patterns." Chen touched a device on her wrist. "Bridge, prepare for emergency transport of Alliance crew." Before anyone could protest, the familiar blue shimmer enveloped them. When the light faded, they were standing in what was unmistakably a military command center, but one unlike anything in the Alliance database. The space was vast, filled with holographic displays that showed tactical information in 3-dimensional detail. Dozens of humans moved with efficient purpose between stations that seemed to blend technology and art in a way that was both beautiful and intimidating. "Welcome aboard the TDF Indomitable," Chen said, gesturing to the space around them. "This is our flagship command vessel." Zexhai looked around in wonder. The ship's interior was designed on a scale that suggested the humans built for both functionality and psychological impact. Everything spoke of a civilization that had turned warfare into a science and possibly an art form. "Admiral," Navigator Keltus said, staring at the tactical displays, "these readings, your ship is massive, but according to my instruments, it's also moving at impossible speeds while maintaining perfect stability." "Gravitational manipulation technology," Chen replied casually. "We learned to bend space-time to our purposes about 40,000 years ago. It makes travel much more efficient." Dr. Yathara was examining what appeared to be a holographic medical station. "Admiral, these medical scanners are detecting cellular structures I don't understand. Your people have been genetically modified?" "Enhanced would be a better term. When we left the old galaxy, we knew we'd be traveling for millennia, possibly encountering threats we couldn't imagine. We adapted ourselves to survive in hostile environments and fight enemies that might be beyond our original capabilities." Telmos was listening to a device Chen had given him, his expression growing increasingly amazed. "Commander, I'm monitoring their ship's internal communications. Their crew is coordinating defensive maneuvers against the incoming Devourers, but they're discussing it like it's a routine training exercise." Before Zexhai could respond, a new voice spoke from the air around them. Admiral Chen, Devourer scouts have entered weapons range. Shall we eliminate them? Negative, Captain Morrison. I want them to see what happens next. Broadcast on all frequencies so their collective consciousness witnesses this. Acknowledged, Admiral. All stations report ready. Chen turned to Zexhai with an expression that was somewhere between professional courtesy and predatory anticipation. Commander, your people have been fighting the Devourers for 17 years. You've learned their tactics, their capabilities, their weaknesses. Tell me, what's the most effective weapon you've found against them? Zexhai considered the question. Concentrated plasma bursts can disable their ships temporarily, but they adapt quickly. Our best strategy has been hit-and-run tactics, trying to slow their advance rather than stopping them completely. Chen nodded. Reasonable, given your resources. Now watch what happens when you have the right tools for the job. The main display showed the approaching Devourer ships, sleek, organic-looking vessels that seemed to shift and flow like living creatures. There were 47 of them, each one the size of an Alliance cruiser. Beginning demonstration, the voice announced. Engaging enemy targets. What happened next defied everything Zexhai understood about space warfare. The human ships didn't fire visible weapons or launch missiles. Instead, the space around the Devourer vessels simply changed. One by one, the enemy ships began to collapse in on themselves, as if reality was folding inward around them. In less than 30 seconds, 47 Devourer vessels were compressed into perfect spheres of super-dense matter that glowed with intense radiation. Gravitational compression weapons, Chen explained calmly. We turn the enemy's mass against them. Very effective, very clean, and completely impossible to adapt to or defend against. The bridge crew of the Far Horizon stood in stunned silence. The most dangerous enemy the Alliance had ever faced had just been eliminated without any apparent effort. Admiral, Zexhai said slowly, that demonstration was enlightening. But those were just scouts. The Devourers have hundreds of thousands of ships, many of them the size of small moons. We're aware of their numbers, Chen replied. We've been conducting our own reconnaissance of their forces for the past few months. The situation is indeed serious. She gestured, and the display shifted to show a tactical overview of Devourer space. The scale was horrifying, a spreading cancer of consumed worlds that stretched across thousands of light years. However, Chen continued, you should understand that what you've seen today is just a small sample of human capabilities. We've had 50,000 years to prepare for war, Commander. We didn't waste that time. Dr. Yathara looked up from a medical scanner she'd been examining. Admiral, I have to ask, how many humans are there? Current population across all our worlds and vessels is approximately 800 billion, Chen replied matter-of-factly. The number was staggering. The entire Alliance, encompassing over 1,000 species, had a total population of perhaps 200 billion before the Devourer War began. Admiral, Zexhai said, trying to process the implications. Your people have been preparing for war for 50 millennia. Surely you must have found enemies worthy of your attention during that time. Chen's expression grew distant for a moment, and Zexhai glimpsed something that might have been sadness in her eyes. We found many enemies, Commander. We fought wars that lasted centuries against machines that turned planets into weapons, against energy beings that could exist in the vacuum of space, against collective intelligences that spanned multiple dimensions. We became very, very good at winning. She paused, looking out at the stars visible through the command center's viewport. But we also learned something important during those millennia. Victory without purpose becomes meaningless. Strength without something to protect becomes destruction for its own sake. We realized that what made us human wasn't our ability to fight, but what we chose to fight for. Chen turned back to Zexhai with renewed focus. Your alliance represents something we lost long ago, Commander. A diverse collection of species working together, building something greater than the sum of their parts. The Devourers threaten not just your lives, but the very concept of cooperative civilization. The Admiral touched her wrist device again. Bridge, set course for Alliance space, maximum speed. Admiral, Zexhai protested, you can't be serious about involving your people in our war. This isn't your fight. Chen's smile was sharp as a blade and twice as dangerous. Commander, you're wrong about that. This became our fight the moment the Devourers decided that intelligent life was something to be consumed rather than cherished. She gestured to the tactical display, which now showed human ships beginning to move throughout the system in formations that spoke of absolute precision and overwhelming force. Besides, she added with the casual confidence of someone who had never known defeat, we've been looking for a worthy enemy for quite some time. The Devourers might finally provide us with an interesting challenge. As the Indomitable began to move toward Alliance space at speeds that made hyperspace travel seem pedestrian, Zexhai realized that the war was about to change in ways that no one, not the Alliance, and possibly not even the Devourers themselves, could possibly imagine. The humans were coming to join the fight, and they were bringing 50,000 years of military evolution with them. The humans had been found, and everything was about to change. The Terran Defense Force arrived at the edge of Alliance space like a force of nature given form and purpose. Zexhai stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching through the viewports as human ships materialized from hyperspace in formations that defied comprehension. "Sweet ancient flames," Telmos whispered, staring at the tactical displays. "Commander, how many ships is that?" Admiral Chen consulted a holographic display with casual efficiency. Initial deployment force is approximately 50,000 vessels, ranging from patrol craft to strategic battleships. The main fleet will arrive once we've assessed the tactical situation. 50,000 ships, Dr. Yithara repeated in amazement. Admiral, that's more vessels than the entire Alliance fleet at the height of our power. This is just our rapid response force, Doctor. When humanity mobilizes for war, we tend to be thorough. Chen's expression grew serious as she studied the incoming intelligence reports. Commander Zexhai, your Supreme Command is requesting immediate strategic consultation. They're concerned about our arrival. Zexhai could imagine why. The appearance of 50,000 unknown warships would terrify any military command, ally, or enemy. Admiral, perhaps we should arrange a formal meeting. The Alliance Council will want to understand your intentions. Agreed. But first, I think we should address the immediate tactical situation. Chen gestured, and the main display showed a real-time map of the war zone. Red markers indicated Devourer forces, while blue showed Alliance positions. The pattern was clear and terrifying. The Alliance was losing badly. According to your military communications, the Devourers are preparing a final push against your core worlds. They've massed approximately 300,000 ships in the Kepler Nebula. Your remaining forces number less than 2,000 vessels. Chief Engineer Brondar looked up from a console he'd been studying with fascination. Admiral, your tactical computers are showing details about Devourer capabilities that our intelligence services have never detected. How is that possible? We've been conducting our own reconnaissance while traveling to your territory. Human stealth technology is quite advanced. Chen paused, then added with a slight smile. Also, we captured several Devourer ships for detailed analysis. You captured them? Zexhai asked incredulously. Commander, Devourer ships self-destruct rather than allow capture. We've never managed to take one intact. That's because you've been trying to capture them while they're still operational. We found it more efficient to disable their self-destruct mechanisms first, then neutralize their crews without destroying the vessels. Chen spoke as if describing routine maintenance procedures. Navigator Keltas was examining human star charts, his expression growing increasingly confused. Admiral, these navigation charts show stellar formations that don't exist in our databases. According to this, you've mapped regions of space that extend far beyond anything the Alliance has ever explored. The galaxy is much larger than your current maps indicate, Chen confirmed. During our travels, we've cataloged approximately 40 million star systems, identified several thousand spacefaring civilizations, and established contact with those that seemed compatible with our values. The scale of human civilization was becoming apparent, and it was staggering. HFY realized that the Alliance, which had considered itself the dominant power in their region of the galaxy, was actually a small local group in an area that humanity had been observing like scientists studying a nature preserve. Admiral, he said carefully, when you say you've identified thousands of spacefaring civilizations, do you mean that humanity has been managing galactic affairs without anyone knowing? Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Managing is too strong a word. Observing, occasionally intervening when species faced extinction from natural disasters or hostile neighbors. We learned long ago that civilizations develop better when they find their own paths. Direct interference usually causes more problems than it solves. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. The humans hadn't just been preparing for war during their long exile. They'd been serving as silent guardians for countless civilizations, protecting them from threats they never even knew existed. Dr. Yathara looked up from her medical scanner with amazement. Admiral, I've been analyzing the biological data from your crew. The genetic modifications you mentioned are far more extensive than I initially realized. Your people have been engineered to survive in environments that would kill most species instantly. Survival was only part of it, Chen replied. We also enhanced our cognitive abilities, reflexes, coordination, pattern recognition. War is ultimately about making better decisions, faster than your enemy can adapt to them. Before anyone could respond, every alarm on the bridge began sounding simultaneously. The tactical display shifted to show a new threat. Devourer ships were emerging from hyperspace throughout Alliance territory, not in one massive fleet, but in coordinated strike groups hitting multiple targets. It's a simultaneous attack on all remaining Alliance worlds, Telmos reported, his voice tight with horror. They're not just trying to win the war. They're trying to end it in a single coordinated strike. Chen studied the display with professional interest. Clever. They're forcing the Alliance to divide their remaining forces to defend multiple targets, ensuring that no single world has enough protection to mount an effective defense. Admiral, HFY said desperately, can your forces help? Even 50,000 ships can't defend dozens of star systems simultaneously. No, Chen agreed calmly. But 50,000 ships can do something much more effective. She touched her wrist device. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. Execute Operation Righteous Fury. Authorization code Alpha 77 Tango. The response was immediate. On the tactical display, human ships began moving in a pattern that initially seemed random, but quickly revealed itself to be devastatingly precise. Instead of racing to defend Alliance worlds, they were positioning themselves along the hyperspace routes the Devourers were using to coordinate their attacks. Admiral Morrison, Chen said to the air, begin Phase 1. What happened next would be remembered by every species in the galaxy for the rest of their recorded history. At precisely synchronized moments, human ships throughout Devourer space began implementing something they called spatial interdiction. The effect was immediate and absolute. Every Devourer ship in hyperspace was suddenly pulled back into normal space, their faster-than-light travel capability completely neutralized. The coordinated attack became a scattered collection of confused enemy forces, each group suddenly isolated and vulnerable. "How?" Zexhai whispered, watching hundreds of thousands of enemy ships appearing on sensors throughout the galaxy. "Hyperspace travel requires specific quantum conditions to maintain dimensional stability," Chen explained matter-of-factly. "We've learned how to disrupt those conditions on a galactic scale. No ship can enter or exit hyperspace while our interdiction fields are active." Telmos looked up from his communications station with growing excitement. "Commander, I'm receiving reports from Alliance forces throughout the galaxy. The Devourer attacks have stopped. Their ships are trapped in normal space, unable to coordinate or retreat." Dr. Yathera was studying the tactical display with scientific fascination. "Admiral, the precision required to coordinate this kind of operation across such vast distances, the computational power alone must be enormous. We've had a lot of time to develop our technology, Doctor. But more importantly, we've learned that the most effective way to win a war isn't to fight harder. It's to change the nature of the battlefield itself." Chen gestured, and the display shifted to show human ships beginning the second phase of their operation. Instead of engaging the scattered Devourer forces directly, they were systematically destroying the infrastructure that supported the enemy's war machine. "We've identified approximately 40,000 Devourer shipyards, manufacturing centers, and resource processing facilities. Our deep strike teams are eliminating them now." The tactical display lit up with explosions as human forces attacked targets throughout Devourer space with surgical precision. Entire industrial complexes that had taken the enemy decades to build were being eliminated in minutes. "But the most important targets," Chen continued, "are the Devourer command nodes. These creatures may be a collective intelligence, but they still require communication networks to coordinate their actions." On the display, Zexhai watched human ships attacking what appeared to be massive biological structures hidden throughout Devourer territory. As each command node was destroyed, entire sections of the enemy fleet became motionless, their ships drifting like deactivated machines. "Admiral," Chief Engineer Brondar said with growing awe, "in less than 2 hours, you've neutralized an enemy force that the Alliance has been fighting for 17 years. Time and preparation, Engineer. We've been studying the Devourers since they first appeared in your region of space. We know their strengths, their weaknesses, and most importantly, their dependencies." Chen turned to Zexhai with an expression that mixed professional satisfaction with something deeper. A sense of justice finally served. "Commander, your people fought bravely against an enemy that was simply too large and too adaptive for conventional warfare to defeat. But conventional warfare was never going to be enough against a threat like this." The Admiral gestured, and the display showed the current state of the galaxy. The red markers representing Devourer forces were fading one by one as human ships systematically eliminated isolated enemy groups throughout space. The Devourers made a fundamental error in their approach to warfare. They assumed that absorption and adaptation would always be enough to overcome any opponent. They never considered facing an enemy that could change the basic rules of engagement. Telmos looked up from his station with amazement. "Admiral, I'm receiving a transmission from Supreme Admiral Korthfel. He's requesting immediate strategic consultation and formal establishment of military alliance protocols." Chen smiled, and for the first time since they'd met her, the expression seemed entirely genuine. "Of course, the Alliance has earned the right to be treated as equal partners in whatever comes next." She paused, looking out at the stars where human and Alliance ships were beginning to work together to process the scattered remnants of the Devourer fleet. "But first we should discuss the future. The Devourers were a significant threat, but they weren't the only hostile force in the galaxy. There are other dangers out there, species and entities that make the Devourers look like a minor inconvenience." Zexhai felt a chill at the casual way she mentioned threats worse than the creatures that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization. However, Chen continued, the Alliance has proven something important during this war. You've shown that different species can work together. That diversity of thought and approach makes civilizations stronger rather than weaker. That's a rare and valuable quality in the universe. She turned to face Zexhai directly, and he saw something in her eyes that he recognized from the greatest leaders he'd ever known. The ability to see possibilities where others saw only problems. Commander, humanity has been alone for 50,000 years, growing stronger but also growing isolated. We've become very good at war, but we've forgotten some things about peace. The Alliance could help us remember. The implications were staggering. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was essentially offering to join the Alliance as equal partners, bringing not just their overwhelming capabilities, but their accumulated knowledge of the galaxy's true scope and dangers. In return, Chen continued, we can offer protection from threats you haven't even imagined yet, access to technology and resources beyond your current understanding, and most importantly, the chance to help build something greater than either of our civilizations could achieve alone. As if summoned by her words, the tactical display shifted to show a view of the entire galaxy. Not just the small region the Alliance had known, but the vast spiral of stars that stretched far beyond their previous understanding. Thousands of civilizations were marked on the display, some friendly, some neutral, some clearly hostile. This is the real galaxy, Commander. The Alliance territory that you've been defending is approximately 0.1% of the inhabited regions. There's an entire universe out there waiting to be explored, protected, and understood. Zexhai looked at the display, at the vast scope of existence that had just been revealed, and realized that the war with the Devourers hadn't been an ending. It had been a beginning. Admiral, he said quietly, I think the Alliance Council will be very interested in discussing this partnership. Chen's smile was sharp and confident, the expression of someone who had just accomplished exactly what she'd set out to do. Commander, I think this is the beginning of a very interesting friendship. Outside the viewports, human and Alliance ships worked together to secure the aftermath of a war that had lasted 17 years and ended in less than a day. The galaxy had changed forever, and somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, new possibilities were being born. The legends had been true after all. Humanity had never stopped being the species that other civilizations whispered about in their oldest stories. They had simply been waiting for a war worthy of their attention and a civilization worthy of their protection. The Devourers were gone, but the universe was vast and full of wonders yet to be discovered. And now, for the first time in 50,000 years, humanity wouldn't have to face those wonders alone.